Raphael, thank you for hosting me in the cash room of the Federal Reserve of Atlanta. This is amazing. And you walk around this place, you get a sense for the real impact that the Fed has and the economic power of this region. How does that inspire you to do what you do?
Well, first of all, it's great to have you here. I'm really glad to be able to show off our building and all the great people that we have here. And coming to the cash processing area, it really does remind me that the Federal Reserve is a foundational institution, and what we do impacts people every day in ways that they usually don't even think about, and we can't mess that up.
Exactly.
So for me, it's really a sign that we have to be very careful, take our job very seriously, and do it to the best of our ability, and it's just a wonderful thing.
You're great at it, and let's continue this conversation upstairs.
Happy to. Let's go make it happen.
Welcome to another episode of Gaining Altitude Conversations Worth Navigating. This series signifies Delta's commitment to connecting the world in ways that matter most. Yes, we do it physically by proudly connecting the world through safe and reliable air travel, but we also own a responsibility to connect each other through honest dialogue, especially on important topics facing us all. Today we're on site at the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta, where today's guest, Dr. Raphael Bostic, serves as President and Chief Executive Officer. Dr. Bostic is an accomplished American economist, a published academic, and a public servant who's responsible for monetary policies that ensure fiscal and economic prosperity throughout the United States. In his role, Dr. Bostic is also living history, as he is the first African-American president of a Federal Reserve regional bank in the system's 110-year history. Dr. Bostic also served as Assistant Secretary of Policy Development and Research at the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development, where he worked hard to solve important housing and community development issues. I could truly go on and on about Dr. Bostic's impressive background, but I'll summarize it by saying, simply put, he lives a life that's rooted in bettering the lives of those around him. And for that, we're both incredibly thankful and excited to learn from him. So in today's episode, we'll explore his economic leadership, explore topics like intersectionality and equitable outcomes, and so much more. And as always, we're incredibly grateful to have you a part of the conversation with us. And with that said, it's my honor to pass it over to our host for today, Delta CEO Ed Bastian.
Thank you, Jamar. Good being with you, and Raphael, thank you for having us here and visiting you at the Atlanta Federal Reserve. It's a pretty impressive building, a pretty impressive role that you play and your organization plays in our economy. How'd you get here?
You know, that's a funny question. I ask myself that a lot, actually. You know, when I started in grad school, I got an econ PhD at Stanford. I really wanted to be sort of an urban guy, impacting how cities grow and how they play out. My mother grew up in New York City. I had spent a lot of my childhood there. We were basically a middle class, first generation college type of family. And we're just trying to figure things out and find stability and get to sustainability in an interesting way. Fortunate enough to go to Harvard undergrad.
Yeah.
I was a science person, and my first science class scared the heck out of me. So I decided I needed to get out of there, and then got to psychology and then economics, and the two of those have really set me on a nice path, because I love econ. It's super important. But people don't act the way econ models do exactly. And so knowing the psychology has been super helpful. And then from there, I got a job at the Federal Reserve in Washington, D.C., was a research economist there, then went to be a professor at USC, the University of Southern California, and did a lot of things in terms of running degree programs, forecasting real estate trends, and studying housing and housing institutions. Then, of course, the great financial crisis happened, and we know that was a housing crisis.
Right.
And so I got tapped to go to Washington and try to help fix things and clean things up with the Obama administration. Was there for 3 years at the Department of Housing and Urban Development running their policy shop. And that was, I'll just say, for me, transformative in the sense that I really learned the value of leadership. and I've really tried to take that forward in the rest of my career. I went back to academia, actually, and was just minding my own business, doing some research. I had some graduate students I was working with. We were doing really great work, and then I got a call that this job was open. Had never really thought about it, but said, I think it'd be a pretty good job, so maybe I should just throw my hat in the ring, and was fortunate enough to get selected to do the job. And since then, it's just been a wonderful experience.
Well, we're fortunate to have you in the job, serving all of us and looking after our economy, particularly here in the Southeast. So Federal Reserve President, that's a lofty title. It's an important title, an important role. I don't think many people know what the Federal Reserve President is tasked to do. So can you explain to the common man what the role consists of?
I will try. Now, I actually learned a lot as I was doing it. And, the first thing I think people don't really appreciate, and I know I didn't, is that I have a staff of 1,700 people.
Yeah.
So it is a real organization that requires management, requires a lot of engagement to make sure that my team understands sort of what our challenges are, what our performance expectations should be, and what our culture should be. Because, this, if you set the right culture, your teams can really produce outstanding things.
Right.
And so I spent a lot of time on that. Most people, when they think about the Fed, they think about monetary policy and interest rates. So I get to go to DC every 6 to 8 weeks to help make decisions about whether interest rates are going to go up, or are they going to stay the same, or are they going to go down. That's a tremendous responsibility. And to do that well, I then really need to know and understand how the economy is working in my district. And I'm the 6th Federal Reserve District, so we covers the states of Florida, Georgia, and Alabama, the bottom half of Mississippi, the bottom half of Louisiana, and the eastern 2/3 of Tennessee. So it's a large geographic area, it's a diverse economy, and I really need to understand what's happening in all of it.
Yeah.
So I have a whole team that helps me understand those things and get that done. We're also a bank supervisor, and one of our jobs is to make sure that the banking system it remains safe and sound. And as I say, I like banks, and I need them to be alive tomorrow.
Yeah.
So we're going to make sure we do all we can to ensure that every bank in our district can do that. Then another thing, we were just in the cash room.
Right.
We are really involved in payments. Cash is one way that we facilitate payments, but we also help with wire transfers and automated clearinghouse or ACH payments. We do a lot of settlement and clearing support for when people are going to Target and those sort of issues. So we touch Americans literally every day. And the nice thing for me is that nobody knows that. They don't think about it. And that's a sign that we're doing our job well.
Yeah.
And that's really important. Then the last thing I would say we do is, or I do in this role, is I try to talk to people, explain to them how the economy is working. One of the things that I think is really important is that our knowledge be everyone's knowledge.
Right.
So we put a lot of material out on our website. I try to talk in regular plain language, so you don't need a PhD to understand what's going on.
Thank you.
It's so funny. I get more comments after I talk. I didn't expect to understand a word that you said, and I understood it all. It's just amazing.
That's great.
And to me, that's really, really a success. And then the other part is to talk with communities to understand what their challenges are, whether it be affordable housing or health care and hospitals or small business development. And then we have a network that we can connect up with our partners in these communities to help them overcome those challenges and find solutions. So it's multidimensional. Every day is different. I get to meet a lot of people, and I've been really fortunate that I've just learned a ton in this role. You just learn things every day.
And you mentioned to me earlier that the Atlanta region is the 3rd largest region in the country of the Federal Reserve System.
Yeah, so we are, I think, the second.
Oh, second, sorry.
Yes,
second.
and the San Francisco region, in terms of economic performance, is about 40% of the economy. Our district is about 1/6 of the economy.
Wow, that's big.
And there's so much growth in the Southeast. You think about what's happening in Florida, in Georgia. Nashville is growing incredibly fast. It's just a very vibrant economy, but it's also diverse. So our district is sort of a microcosm for the U.S. economy. If you took the U.S. economy and you distributed it by sector, So defense, agriculture, tech, all that kind of stuff. And then you stacked up the 6th district.
Transportation.
Don't
forget transportation.
I'm on Delta, and I didn't take transportation. Yeah, the 6th district is exactly the same.
Oh.
And so if you understand the 6th district, I feel like you understand the U.S. economy, and it really gives me some real insight to help make good policy.
That's really interesting perspective. And these days, certainly for the last year, the Fed has been under the media scrutiny. The world is watching to see what direction our economy is headed. What's your take on the economy at the current time?
Well, we've been through a lot. And, the pandemic was something that no one expected. I'll say I didn't expect it. And it really shocked the economy, and it caused policymakers to do things that none of us had on our radar screen.
Right.
We cut interest rates to zero and said we are going to be maximally supportive. The Congress put a lot of support into the economy. Mm-hmm. And what happened was we avoided the worst of the outcomes. At the beginning of the pandemic, everyone was worried that we were going to lose thousands of small businesses. Families were not going to have income, so they were going to be evicted and lose their homes. And none of that happened. Yeah. And so it meant that we actually weathered the storm. And it turned out that most families and most businesses came out on the backside even stronger than they usually are in an economic cycle. And that put tension, because we know that there were supply chain disruptions. Everyone has heard about all those things. And so basics of economics, when demand is high and supply is low, that puts incredible upward pressure on prices, and that equals inflation.
Right.
And that's really what we've been fighting for the last year, to try to rebalance the economy, get demand and supply back into some degree of comparable level, and then let the economy run. And it's been some work, right? Yeah. So we've had to do quite a bit. I'm grateful that, as we come into the summertime, we're starting to see inflation get closer back to our target. And I'm hopeful that we can do this in a way that leads to an orderly sort of rebalancing, so that we don't have a lot of disruption from a broader economic perspective and loss of jobs.
Yeah, well, that's important. And from my standpoint, you were a great friend to me personally, to Delta. All through the pandemic, we talked a lot. We spent a lot of time together. I don't see you as much now that we're busier traveling.
That's what happens,
and you're busy,
right?
You're busy in D.C. and New York. But I really always appreciated your perspective. And yeah, there's a lot of folks out there that are Monday morning quarterbacks and should have done a little less of that and a little more of that, or moved sooner or moved later. But in context, our economy is healthy. Our economy continues to be the envy of the world. Our employment levels are strong. Our people are producing enormous amount of value for goods and services, and the consumer sector particularly. And I appreciate the leadership that you've been part of.
Well, thank you for that. I would say you've provided a lot of leadership as well, and just providing clarity for people on what our challenges are, what our expectations are, and what the possibilities are. One of the real defining characteristics of the pandemic for me was uncertainty. People didn't know what was going to happen. They didn't know where things were going to go. And leaders like you really helped provide more certainty. And the certainty was not that I know exactly what's going to happen next week, but it was more that I'm going to be with you. Or I'm going to try to make sure that you're okay, and every person who works with you is going to be okay. And we can get through this together. And at the Federal Reserve, we tried to say that from a policy perspective, so businesses and others didn't have to worry as much. And as I've gone around, I will tell you, I've had more than one person come to me and say, I'm really glad you were clear and bold at the beginning of the pandemic, because it made me feel some confidence that we can get through this. Exactly. And I'm just going to stay engaged, and that's exactly what we needed to have happen.
There was, as crazy as the period it was, there was also a unity of purpose to battle the pandemic, to get through together. And I think, again, as I said earlier, there's certainly things that people can look back on and say we didn't get it all right, but we got a lot of it right. And it's the courage and the bold decision making that your organization and you've been part of that got us here.
Well, thank you for that. I will say our team is closer now than it was before the pandemic. And part of it was that we admitted that and acknowledge really that everyone had other things going on. Like it was such a hard time. There were other things, and things were going to be unexpected. And so we said, that's okay. If you're on a Zoom call and your child is crying in the back, go handle the child. Go make that child happy, fine, and strong again. Don't worry about us. We'll be all right. And as soon as everyone started to see everyone else's full range of life, we all became closer together, and our teams are stronger. We work better, and it's really been a positive. And so now that we're moving to another phase, the challenge we're facing is like, how do we preserve all that good stuff while keeping the good stuff when we were all in the room together all the time?
Exactly, finding that new way of work.
Exactly right.
That we're all striving for. So we're in an incredible building, an institution, the Fed. This is a great place. You're an institutional barrier breaker. You're courageous. First Black African American Federal Reserve president, first gay Federal Reserve president. That's quite a statement, and it's had impact, I think, on all of us in terms of the way you lead inclusively, the way you think about society differently, and bringing new thinking and new thoughts, innovation, but also compassion to your role. Can you tell me a little bit about that in terms of how that's affected you and how it influences you and your mandate for change?
Well, it's really interesting when I think about the arc of my career. So much of it has been positive, but the challenge has been there was a lot of stuff I didn't know, because I didn't have any of my relatives or people in my network to tell me things. And one of the realities and the harsh realities is there are things you need to know. And if you don't know you even need to know those things. And so much of my life has been discovery and really being the beneficiary of some people looking out for me. So there was a woman across the street when I was growing up. Her name was Mrs. Sklar. And she made sure that my mother knew I needed to take the PSAT and the SAT to expose me to make me eligible for scholarships. That we didn't even know we had to do those things. In graduate school, I had a professor, Don Brown, and he took me aside. He said, "Don't let these people stress you out. Keep your head straight and focus on the things you want, and you control your destiny." And that was really an important message, because I wasn't really thinking that at the time. And then as a professional, I've had others, Susan Wachter, a professor at Wharton, Stuart Gabriel, who's now at UCLA, who took me under their wing and said, here are some things you need to be doing and places you need to go. All of those things helped me know things that I wouldn't have known otherwise, and have really helped me get engaged and connected in ways that were helpful. And then once you get there, then of course you have to sort of fall back on your talents and be committed to working hard. And so, I got that from my parents and my Aunt Vi, who was she was a school principal, and she was not going to have any of her kids not really doing the work. And so, we worked super hard and really try to just show up in the best way you possibly can. And the being exposed plus the good work, I think, has been really helpful. And beyond that, I try to tell people all the time, if you start to get a reputation for doing good work, people will want you on your team.
Right.
And that is something that I've tried to just do all the time, and it's been really, really helpful. And then on the Trailblazer thing, I will just say I've never posed for more selfies than I have in this job, and it has been truly just a tremendous. I was surprised, because I'm not a picture taker. I don't really do that. But when people come up, it's like, can I get a picture with you? And you see the excitement and the happiness. It's moving, and it's been.
People look up to you.
It's been well.
I know you're a humble man. We're good friends, but people do look up to you.
Well, I appreciate that. It's one of the things that makes the job rich. Because I get to see people happy and excited, and I never expected that.
But you also have a real responsibility, a mandate. And when people talk about the Fed and the mandates of the Fed itself, which is fundamentally what one of your responsibilities. It's about employment and taking care of the labor force, and inflation, trying to keep those two jobs high and prices as moderate as possible
Yes.
for the average working family to be able to manage the economy for their future. How has that mandate kind of, you kind of step back and you realize that the important role you play, as well as the continued emphasis that you've had in terms of creating a more inclusive society. And I see it in Atlanta. You're very involved in our city, and I appreciate that. I see it in the work you do. I see it when you provide your commentary on the economy. There's a societal impact that's real here. And then, when I think about how you drive policy to affect change, it's an interesting question to watch you do it.
Well, we have a tagline at our bank, an economy that works for everyone. And, monetary policy is really designed to set a foundation so that people have some certainty about where the economy is going to be 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 4 years from now, so they can make longer term investments. Because if you don't really have confidence where things are going to be 12 months from now, then all you're going to do is worry about the next 12 months.
Right.
You're not going to look further out than that. So monetary policy is really supposed to set the economy on an even trajectory where you have some predictiveness, some assurances or confidence that you know where it's going to wind up. And if we do that well, and people start to make those investments, if businesses start to make those investments, those businesses are going to be more productive, they're going to be more innovative, and they're going to be more resilient than they would be otherwise, and we will see more prosperity. And so as I think about what our role is, our job is to help facilitate that process. Mm-hmm. And an economy that works for everyone, I think, is a nice tagline for that, because it's just a reminder, we serve everyone. And we want to make sure that we are positioning everyone to be their best self. I believe every person can be great. Mm-hmm. And what I try to do with, and I should also say, this is internal to the bank as well as external more broadly. And what I'm trying to do right now is make sure that we're doing all that we can to make sure every person is great, every business is great, and every community is great. And there are many ways that we do that, but it's all been incredibly inspiring, because I've actually seen it. I've seen people reimagine who they could be in our organization. Mm-hmm. I've seen people in communities when they start to understand that there are ways to overcome challenges in, say, the school system or in finding access to capital. That excitement comes back, and it gives me a lot of confidence that we can do this, mm-hmm. and we can be more, and we can be better, and we can find ideas from places that maybe we've never had them before. Yeah. And sometimes we haven't had ideas come from those places, not because there weren't smart people there, but it's just because they haven't had the opportunity to bring those ideas forward. So, that's the value of inclusiveness, yeah. and the power that it can bring to all of us.
Yeah. And it was never more obvious during the pandemic, between the gap between the haves and the have-nots, and how we all needed to work together to get through the most challenging 3 years, hopefully, of our lifetime.
It better be. I don't know if I want it to
I'm
be.
I'm not ready for it. I'm not going to do
exactly.
it again. I'm not signed up for another run. But I like to take this to a different level and kind of getting toward your expertise and your field of study, which is housing and urban development, and the work you've done and the research you've done. And we talk about affordable housing as a real challenge for us here in our city, here in our country. How is the Fed, in your role, having influence in making change happen to make housing more equitable, more affordable, safer for families of the future?
Well, there may not be one area or issue that is more common across my district than the lack of affordable housing. It seems like every town I go to, whether Atlanta, Nashville, big and hot, Miami has serious problems there, but you go to Knoxville, that was one of the first things they wanted to talk about. You go to Birmingham and Montgomery, they tell me the same thing. Even in some of these more rural places, they have affordability challenges, because they really need to have homes get rehabbed pretty significantly. and that costs money that they don't have. And so you have a lot of challenges with affordable housing. And so what we do is we want to make sure that we chronicle them and understand them, and then connect people up with organizations and institutions that actually do the work. You know, one of the things that I have to remind people all the time is the Fed doesn't do everything, right? There are some parts of the economy that we don't have direct authority over or ways to influence, but that doesn't mean we can't speak to those things. And as I think about how we engage more broadly, there are really 4 aspects. One is that we promote things that work. So we're always looking around the country to see, is someone doing something innovative that makes a good difference? The second is, and I've talked a bit about this, is to advise. And we try to advise communities and help them know what good ideas are and what bad ideas are, and how their things fit together. A third, and I have a team, is research. And I have a team at the bank that does a lot of research to try to understand these things, the underlying bases that drive, say, workforce development success or challenges, or healthcare issues and how that impacts, or those sorts of issues. And then the fourth thing we do is we convene. And one of the things I've really appreciated about our role and our institution is that when the Fed calls, usually people answer.
Yeah.
And when the Fed asks someone to come to a meeting, usually they show up. Yeah. And so it gives us an opportunity to bring together different collections of people.
Sure.
And drive different kind of conversations. I was just in Florida a couple months ago, and we had a conversation on affordable housing, and half the people had never been in the room together before.
Wow. And
they realized there were opportunities for partnerships and collaborations and sharing of information that could get to different kind of solutions. And our job was just to convene. We weren't going to be in the partnership. We weren't going to drive any of those sort of things. But just because we had seen so many different people, it gave us an idea that, they would be interesting together. They might be able to do different things together and get to different kind of outcomes.
Yeah. So are you optimistic with what you see happening?
I am optimistic. I don't think you can be in this job and not be an optimist.
I agree.
Right? So
I say the same thing.
So you have to think that there's human potential that's still out there to be realized. But my experience has been fantastic. I have to say, as I go around, what I see in communities is hope. People want their places to be better, and they're willing to work to make those things better. And they're actually willing to work with anybody who they think can help them succeed in that space. And so as I've gone around the 6th District, whether it be in Appalachian Mountains, the Florida coast, the Black Belt of Alabama, or New Orleans, I get the same vibe, right? These places are all trying to be better. The people in their communities want the most that they can for themselves, but also for their children. Yeah. And it's like we can walk arm in arm, and that makes me very hopeful.
That's great. And I also have to applaud your civic involvement. It's very easy, I would imagine, being in the Fed. It's more of a national role, but you're also a great civic resident of Atlanta. I commend you. You led the Metro Atlanta Chamber through a very difficult time during the pandemic for a year and took on the chairman's role. You've been very involved in charitable endeavors and causes in this community as well. And I think it's great to see someone of your stature kind of getting down and rolling his sleeves up and working with our city leaders as well as our national leaders.
Well, this is a longstanding principle or value of the Atlanta Fed. Like long before I got here, leaders across the bank have been encouraged to be engaged with their civic organizations to help the place be better. Like we are in a community, right? And our talents should help those communities be better and stronger. So when I got here, I was like, it was an impulse that I had, but it was not my impulse driving this. I was just joining the crew that was getting out there. And I would also say thank you for your civic leadership as well. I succeeded you at the chamber, and we've been able to do some really good work and help all of our communities move forward. It's been quite enriching.
That's awesome. Being in the money room, the cash room, I was struck by a question. We have all these new forms of currency that are coming out. Is that going to be a thing of the future? Cash? You've got crypto, you've got other types of currencies that are people are innovating, and people are talking about a cashless world. What's your view of currency and cash and the impact that the Fed will have in the future?
So that's a very complicated question. It sounds simple. There's so many innovations that are happening in how payments can happen, and the methods by which you do it matter. So you mentioned crypto. So crypto, I don't think of as a currency. It doesn't really operate like that. The value goes up and down a lot. But if you were going to have a digital currency, like a central bank digital currency or something like that, in the United States, that would require a lot of things to happen, because today, regular people do not have an account with the central bank. If you were going to have a central bank digital currency, every American would then need to have an account with the central bank or something like that, because we need to be able to track where dollars are going, all those sorts of things. That introduces a whole host of other issues around things like privacy. Because now if I know where your dollars are, I'm going to be able to track where your dollars are spent. And what happens with that information, who manages that. Those are not things that the Federal Reserve has jurisdiction over. So we would need action by the Congress and a whole host of others in order to move those things forward. All that said, there's a lot of innovation that's happening in payments. So we've just rolled out something that we call the FedNow payment system, and it's an instant payment system. So it allows, when a payment happens, your money will be transferred or received instantaneously, as opposed to having to wait 24 hours or 72 hours if you get a check or something before that cash shows up in your account. It will happen instantaneously. That will have tremendous positive benefits for inclusion and financial inclusion, because people who are cash flow constrained won't be as constrained because the money will get to them faster. People will no longer be exposed as much to overdraft fees and those sorts of things. So there's real benefits out there, even if we don't go into digital currencies or anything like that. It's an interesting frontier. And I think a lot will be happening over the next several years.
I'm confident a lot will be happening, because people, you think about technology and where the world is headed in terms of efficiency and effectiveness, and I would hope safety as well. There's a better way to do this.
Well, I would just say, so I said I was an optimist earlier. I'm a nervous optimist, right? So part of my job is to worry, and the safety is a really important thing. With cyber crime and the cyberspace is quite hostile. And so we need to make sure that these technological innovations are done in ways that don't increase exposure to those risks. And we at the Federal Reserve have to be worrying about that. Safe, sound banking system, safe, sound payment system, and make sure that when people plug into those things, they are not exposing themselves to significant losses.
That's great. Well, Raphael, thank you. This has been a wonderful conversation. I think we're going to kick it over to Jamar. I think he's got some closing questions for the both of us.
All right, Jamar.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Raphael. On behalf of myself and my entire Delta community, just want to say thank you for the impact, not only that you've done in this role, but what you've done throughout your entire career, bettering the lives of us all. So I always use the words of Maya Angelou: I come as one to stand as 10,000, but I come as one to stand as 90,000 today to say thank you on behalf of my team. So I'm just going to ask just a few questions, and feel free just to answer them. One of them is a pre-submitted question from our Black Employee Resource Group, BOLD. It's a question around intersectionality and identity. And so many organizations, including Delta, are encouraging employees to bring their best, most authentic self to work. And so what does that mean to you in terms of authenticity in the workplace?
It's really interesting. I've had to think a lot about bringing my whole self to work in this role. And what it has really come down to for me is really knowing who I am, like owning all the aspects of who I am, and not being apologetic about all those dimensions. Like, every person comes with a distinct combination of characteristics, and that's what makes them special. And owning all of that and being front forward on all of that, being transparent on all of that is the most important thing. For me, I'll just say, I know what I'm good at, I know what I'm not good at, I know what I hate doing, and I tell as many people as possible all of those things. Because then as we work and a task comes up, people will say, oh, It's not something we want Raphael to do. Like, we should get someone else to do this. And it allows everything to go a lot smoother. There are other things where they know. Like, I'm a stickler on writing. Like, so on my first job out of college, I was an editor, so I get really picky. So like, let's give him this document to do the editing. And because we know all of the things and all of the richness, the work flows differently on a team to better effect, and the work gets done to better effect. And so for me, I really think it's important to be fully transparent and to understand your strengths and weaknesses and communicate that as much as possible. And the last thing I would also say is, if you do that well, then you'll understand that every person has something special to add, and you'll be looking for that all the time.
Absolutely.
Because every person on a team, if they're fully engaged, that perspective is going to mean they're going to see things that no one else is going to see. And if we can get that to lift up, we'll be in a perfect place.
And I think very much that was evident during the pandemic, where we needed to be transparent because none of us had the answers.
Correct.
And we had to be honest with ourselves. We had to be honest with our teams, our communities, that we were going to do our very best to help work through this. But we needed everyone's involvement and impact and knowledge and insight. I think it's helped us become a much more inclusive organization, speaking for myself at Delta, through the pandemic, because there's a lot of soul searching that we did during a very, very difficult time. It's kind of going back and recapturing our sense of purpose, kind of why we do what we do and why we're here and the difference that we make, and gave us a chance to do a little bit of a reset. And I think, coming out as a more authentic, more vulnerable, more transparent leader is a great thing.
Those are great words. And I will just say, one of the things that I've seen through my career is so many times a team breaks down because a leader is unwilling to say, I don't know, or unwilling to acknowledge that someone else on the team came up with a great idea.
Yeah.
And that vulnerability and that openness and that transparency, it brings everybody in more. It leads to more engagement, and it leads to better collective output.
Yeah.
And it's hard. It's hard the first time you're a manager and something comes up and you don't know, to say you don't know is a thing. But if you can get over that hurdle, your team will like you more, they'll engage with you more, they'll trust you more, they'll give you more, and then the team will be more.
And by the way, the team knows that you don't know, so you
They already
just
know.
be honest with yourself, right?
Exactly.
Wonderfully said. So this conversation, it's clear you're an expert on many things. And I imagine as an academic, you're always on the pursuit to lifelong learning. And so outside of the things that you're an expert on now, what is it currently that both of you are on the pursuit to learning right now?
So, that's an interesting question. I just started picking up golf clubs again.
Oh, did you?
I did.
Oh, we're gonna need to go out.
Well, no, this is the thing. I need more knowledge. Right? I need to figure out how to do this.
That's okay. Golf is a learning journey.
And that'll be important. And there's another area that I'm actually interested in as well, which is native plants. So I'm a bird watcher, and so much of our ecology has been adapted and changed as we've redeveloped things, and it's really put stress on our natural world. And so if I could learn more about native plants, I could be more of an advocate for making sure that we keep nature natural, so that the things around us can thrive. Because when we all thrive, then we all thrive.
Yeah.
And during the pandemic, it's super interesting. So many people, because they were home, started discovering there were birds. And they say, all these birds started coming to my neighborhood. And I was like, no, they've been there all along. You just haven't noticed them. And it's been quite rich that way.
Yeah. I don't know I've picked up something unique, Jamar, but I can tell you something, particularly this year, that I've been very attuned to, is not passing on opportunities. We're all busy. We have lots of different things that we can stay busy in, and I've committed to myself to take advantage of windows of opportunity. And my job affords that because we travel and we get the opportunities to go to some interesting places. And many times I would have passed, whether it's a Formula One Grand Prix in Monaco or a Cannes Film Festival or just family stuff. Kind of making sure that I'm spending a little bit more time with family and loved ones. These are all things that during the pandemic that were taken from us. And I've made a personal commitment to myself that I'm going to make certain I don't miss the experience as I walk through this really great job I have. Because it's easy to do that.
It is easy to get caught up in that. And I'll just say, life is to be enjoyed. And, you got to work hard, but you should find joy every day and grab it whenever you can get it.
Yeah.
And with your job, you're going to amazing places. Yeah. You should be grabbing that every day.
I am. I'm doing my best.
Find joy every day. I love that. So a bit of a fun question here. If you had to choose anything that you would beat the world record at, it could be anything, what do you think that would be?
Like, really? Like,
and you can't say selfies because apparently you both take a lot of selfies.
Well, he just took away my answer because I was going to say my world record was going to be the Fed president who's had the most selfies in history. I don't know that I have any talents like that. I have thought about like a standout moment, like for me as a bird watcher, to go out and be in the field and find like a bird for the first time in a location would be truly amazing. And that would be something that is unforgettable, and it would be a marker that would just be there forever. That'd be my version of, a new world record.
Well, world record. Something that I will never come close to, but what I love to do is, I do love to golf. I also love to ski. And I've always thought to be a world-class skier would be so cool. The speed, the beauty, the grace, the adventure, the thrill, that would be terribly cool. So if I could pick something that I could be world-class at, that would be it, skiing.
So we'll find you on Team USA is what you're saying.
I look forward to that.
I love that. So I'll end with one last question, and Dr. Bostic, we ask this to all of our guests on Gaining Altitude. Many folks tuning in today will hear this theme of connecting, right? You connect the world to commerce and the economy. Delta, we connect via transportation. And so a lot of folks might be listening and saying, how can they connect with the world or connect the world? And so what advice would you give to somebody who's learning their place and being a connector in our society?
So I'd say two things. One is just pay attention, because there are always opportunities for you to be present in places in ways that you may not be thinking about. And your perspective, you're going to see something and it'll give you an opportunity to really redirect how experiences are, and that's important. And then the second is share your knowledge. Go find people who you think don't know things. Actually, I'm going to give a third one. I always do this in my talks. So, but that's really important. At our bank, what I've seen is we have a lot of people now who are going and intentionally going to people who don't have the same amount of information and don't have knowledge about things, and it's leading to opening up the world for other people. And then the third is go places where you don't think you would ever go. And allow yourself to be exposed to parts of the world, the lifestyles, experiences that are new, and make sure that you're always growing, because that will necessarily create new connections that then will reshape you, and it'll reshape the people that you connect with.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to see my daughter tomorrow. She's going to her junior year at University of Georgia. She has spent her summer in Europe. Studying in Paris, and every weekend it seems like she's in some other part of the continent, and I haven't seen her in a little bit of time, so I look forward to hearing about her connection. And I know just from the month she spent over there, she's a very different person. And so while that's a unique experience that she's had the ability to, I could not agree with you more, Raphael, that the need to, not the need, but the opportunity to travel, to connect, to experience, it'll make everyone different, better, more sensitive, more, I think, respectful in terms of what we all get to do in this world together, and better people, more knowledgeable people, but better people, and it'll be a more understanding society with the more in which we open ourselves up. So thank you. This has been a wonderful time together. Thank you for opening up the doors to the Atlanta Fed. This is a very special place.
And you're always welcome to come back. So
I will come back.
We will make sure
I
that
will
happens.
come back, and more importantly, thank you for opening up yourself in terms of your role, your impact, the great job that you have the opportunity to engage our community with, and the great person you are. So thank you, Raphael.
Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Raphael, Ed, and thank you to our employees, customers, and communities for joining us for this episode of Gaining Altitude. We hope you enjoyed our powerful conversation with Dr. Raphael Bostic, and we look forward to having more conversations like these with you in the days ahead. In the meantime, you can catch previous episodes of Gaining Altitude on Delta's YouTube channel, through your podcast platform, or at gainingaltitude.delta.com, where you can also share your feedback and get the latest updates on upcoming episodes. Until next time, I'm wishing you all blue skies. Please take care and stay safe.